National Fisherman and Pacific Marine Expo are proud supporters of the Galley Stories podcast, as we make similar efforts to highlight the people and topics that define commercial fishing. You can see what that looks like in print and online all year long, as well as every November in Seattle, when this community comes together at PME. Check out nationalfisherman.com and pacificmarineexpo.com to learn more.
Hello, and welcome to Galley Stories, stories of the Bering Sea and beyond, hosted by Mark Kaler. My name is Penka Jane, podcast deckhand and longtime listener. We'd thank you to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. Here's today's catch.
Hello guys, and welcome to another installment of Galley Stories, stories of the Bering Sea and beyond. I am your host, Mark Kaler. Today we have Captain David Hillstrand from the Heida with us. How you doing, David?
Really good.
So, welcome to the podcast. Let's just start right off with where were you born and what was your first introduction into the commercial fishery?
I was born in Homer, Alaska. The first thing I remember in commercial fishing, actually the first thing I remember about fishing was being on a tugboat out of Homer, eating cantaloupe. And then the next thing I remember was being on a small crab boat with my dad with king crab in the fish hole.
So those are early memories.
Yes, very early. Yeah, probably 2-3 years old. I remember that.
Oh, we're going back to the real
Yes.
early memories. Okay. What was your first, well, let's talk about your family history in fishing, because your dad fished.
Yeah.
How long did he fish?
He started about 62 fishing. Yep, and then so Dad started then. He had a little boat called the Gertrude Ann, and he'd go out and go crab fishing in Cook Inlet, fish for halibut, salmon, and king crab, and started out fishing. One of the stories I remember Dad telling me about was fishing out of Soldovia, out of Homer, and the guys out of Soldovia didn't like the guys in Homer fishing. So they'd pull their pots and tell them to get the hell out of there. So Pete Elsauce told the guys, hey, leave Johnny alone. There's plenty of crab from the bay for all of us. So my dad tells me this story. About 2 years before Dad passes away, Dad was about 59 then. Dad goes, you remember when I first started out, Pete Elsauce across the bay, one of the local native guys there said, hey, there's room for Johnny here in his family. And I remember that story my dad told me. And it hit me right in the heart. And so I remember Pete had a heart attack and he came across the bay. And Homer's a small town, Soldovia is a small town. You sort of keep track of everybody. And I went up and thanked Pete. I go, Pete, my dad told me the story. He just passed away, and you're over here. I just want to say thank you for saying that and helping our family out. It really meant a lot. And old Pete, I've never seen a bigger smile on his face than the whole world. And so that was a really good time and a good memory about fishing and plenty of room for everyone to have some fun to fish.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like there's enough room for crab nowadays, does it?
No.
So, what was your first experience being hired on it?
My first job was with Rolly on a boat for $75 a day out of Cook Inlet. That was out of high school. My first job was working with Dad for 1% of the catch over out of Cape Douglas for king crab in 7th grade. So we'd go over there, I'd chop the bait and then get the bait jars all done, the hanging bait all done, and then go inside and start cooking for the guys. So he had Randy, Ned, and Vern, I think 3 guys in the boat. And Dad was setting gear, and back then they had these big, huge 8-track stereos and big speakers on the boat. Well, these guys are setting the gear, and they got the Ozark Mountain Daredevils playing. I remember it to this day. In 7th grade, 12 years old? And so I'm in there cooking away, and all of a sudden the guys are setting the gear, and I can hear the guys hollering. And what are they hollering at, man? Johnny, stop the boat! My dad can't hear because the damn stereo is going. I go, Dad, they're hollering. He looks back, he throws it in full reverse. Well, Randy, I forgot the other guy's name, got his freaking foot in the line, was getting dragged back to the back of the boat. Ned was a Vietnam vet, so was Ed. He goes to whip out his knife, and the other guy, Randy, grabs the freaking knife and slices Ed's arm straight open, goes back and cuts the line off of Randy's foot. My dad's in full reverse, and it's all safe, but Ned's arm's just bleeding like crazy. The old man comes downstairs. He is cussing sideways, grabs the whole damn stereo, speakers over the freaking boat. It takes him a couple trips. You're grabbing a speaker and where the wire's hanging on, out it goes. And I'm like in 7th grade, 12 years old, watching this stuff. Big eyeballs like this, man. Grabs the next one, grabs the stereo, gets rid of it. So that's why I don't listen to music on a boat today. But I'll remember that for 1%. I made enough to buy my first Ithaca 12-gauge shotgun, and I must have made $4,000 in that short time in the month of August. But the first job I had was frickin' that was on the Sea Wife. The first job I had was just working on the boat for the Invader, was his first boat. So the Invader had this, in the back old days, you didn't have coolers and freezer units. You had a spot where bait went. Well, that bait was in there. The guys are too lazy to get rid of the bait. So Dad goes, hey, you want to make $20? Sure. So I was probably 5th grade then. So I get in there. He goes, okay, shovel out this bait locker there. Well, I go in there. There's a foot of freaking herring in there with maggots at least a foot deep on top of it. And, of course, you said I'd do it, right? Your first job. Okay, I'll get her done. So I was gagging all the way through this, one shovel at a time. And then you had to grab the damn plastic out of it and the cardboard out of it and shovel it over. And, man, your eyeballs just watching those maggots in on top of that herring. It was in the Homer Boatyard. I remember that today.
Wow.
Remember another story about the Invader, too. So Dad had a stall, and he would come. He was over in Soldovia. He came back to Homer. Well, Grandpa gave his buddies approval to park in Dad's slot. So there's 3 little sailboats in Dad's spot. I think Dad had been drinking a little bit, too, on his way back from Soldovia. So he comes back and goes, what the hell are these boats doing in my stall? So he comes and plows them, just pushes them up in the air. Anyway, Grandpa had 3 sailboats he had to buy after that. And then me and my brothers actually took one of them sailboats out one time off the spit. And the gunnel had a crack in it. So we're going offshore, and we got it from my cousin Matt, which his boy is fishing with us this year in Bristol Bay in 2023. And this is probably back in, it must have been 6th grade. So it must have been 11 years old or something, all 3 of us. We were like me, Jonathan, and Andy, a little younger. And we had that sailboat out, and we kept going, and we drug it down the beach. We had a few rocks in the keel. We tried to push the keel down in. There was a rock that sort of wedged, but we were fine. We were going along. And so we're cruising along that sailboat, going from the Homer Spit out to Gull Island, and we're going to come back. All of a sudden, the boat just starts dipping under the water more, and it starts taking water through that crack. Well, the next thing we know, on a swell, that boat just slides underneath of us, goes down under water about 10 feet, and the mast is like halfway up, and then it comes back up and floats on the surface. And my brother Andy, I remember him saying, think we should wave at some help, David? I go, no, we got this. But luckily the people stopped over. But to have a sailboat go out from under us, that was a story to remember.
Okay, what was the first professional commercial job you did?
Yeah, so that was with Rolly for $75 a day in Cook Inlet for king crab. And it was maybe for August. It was maybe for 2 weeks or something before I went back to school or something. That was just the start. But the very first job I had was working at a Kodiak. At a Kodiak with Glenn Evans on the sleeve. And we're king crabbing back then. And let's see. Yeah, I flew down to Seattle, got the sleeve ready. Brought one of his boys, had a nice Camaro he brought back up to Alaska. The sleeve was an old wood scow. There's not many wood scows anymore, is there, Mark?
No.
It's good to see the pictures. I tell the kids to take pictures of all these wood scows. Yeah. Sleeve was a really nice wood scow. And so we went to Kodiak, went fishing for king crab, and I think I made like $16,000 in like 3 weeks of fishing. So it was pretty good money back then.
Yeah.
And back then, you'd take that money and you'd go buy your first piece of land, you go buy your little house. I had my first house built 2 years out of high school with that money. But you could buy something back then. And I remember he had a mechanic and everybody else. So I was on the rail. The other guys were on the rail for a while, but they kept missing. So I was on the rail finally grappling the buoys and throwing them through the block and stuff. So I was stuck there. I didn't miss at all. I was pretty good. But you learn how to throw that hook by grabbing it just right, put a knot about back 4 inches. You let it whistle through your left hand, your right hand, and of course, if your left hand, it'd be pretty dang hard to throw. And you let that thing go and you stop it about 4 inches past the line. It gives a jerk back and you're just ripping it back in. But that was pretty nice seeing king crab there. That was one of the last years. And then the next job I had was with Paul Much on the Caprice. It was an old bender. And I don't think there's a bender left that hasn't sunk, right?
The Brenna A's a bender.
The Brenna A's a bender. A scout.
Jennifer A's a bender.
No way. So there's a few left.
Well, they've been worked on to make them stable.
Okay.
Those are two very, very seaworthy vessels. But.
So the Caprice was Paul Much's boat, and Paul Much is down in New Gash now fishing, and still fishing today. We saw him last year. So the Caprice, that was gorgeous, gray, black, and silver trim. And we came over there, me and Jonathan and George, another crew member. We'd haul 2 loads of crab pots down to the east side of Kodiak, Cape Barnabas, and then we went back for the 3rd load. Got the 3rd load on, got ready, and he says, "Okay, Killer Miller's showing up." I go, who the heck is Killer Miller? He's going to run us into the ground. I'm like 19, Jonathan's like 18. I might have been 18, and Jonathan might have been 70. I cannot remember to this day how old I was. But it was before we started. We were sailing with Dad before that, and then that slowed down, so we got on the crabbing. And so here comes Mike Miller, big old Norwegian guy, white, old school hat. Like who was the old guy that was here for the longest time? That was the main boss here, Vic
Shiver.
Yeah, he had the same hat as Mike did. Yeah, Mike Miller. So Killer Miller showing up. Oh my God. So Mike shows up, tells us a story about having a gallstone, passing a gallstone. That was just, we never heard no such thing. A grown man dropping to his knees in the shower and about dying in pain. And so we get fishing, and we're pulling potloads of barraday. Now you see the guys are hollering when the pot's half full or 3/4 full. But back then, those barraday were so beautiful, the turquoise colors, the plate sizes on them. I don't know if we fished them all, Mark, or those crab were there. We never fished them. Or the foreigners never got in and trawled for them, but those crab are huge.
Back then though, we were fishing a lot closer to land too. We'd get in a nice little bay and get a pocket of crab. Mm-hmm. Now it seems like they're all, you got to run up to the prips
to get them.
And they may still be there, but the restriction, you don't fish that close anymore.
Yeah. So the pots would come up. I'm swear 4 inches from being just plugged. You'd open the door and they wouldn't even fall out. King crab were worse, because they'd really stick in the pot. And so I'll tell you a story about Dad and high tides and not being able to catch crab later too. But so man, we were just shaking these pots out, and the crab are just thick, and we're getting boatloads of barraday running them back into town. Well, about 2 trips in, this boat sinks offshore, and we're looking around for this guy. We're finding debris everywhere, and we're going, "What the heck is happening?" Can't find them. They died. They all couldn't find them. So oh man, that's pretty depressing. You sort of get sad, quiet, and stop talking after you lose friends that you know out there. And you're just, man, what could it have been like, That movie, The Perfect Storm, at the end of it, they describe what drowning's like. Man, you about drop your jaw, all the stuff you think about not breathing and stuff. And then breathing finally, and then water in. But so we look around for those guys, can't find them, just find, stuff floating from the boat. So we get fishing, the crabbing goes down, so we're down to about half pots of crab and down to 1/4 pot. We're getting the codfish in the pots now. And I'll tell you a trick about getting codfish in a pot with a barraday tunnel, but we probably don't want to say that over the radio. And but these cod were so freaking big. This cod was up to my nose. It must have weighed 114 pounds. I swear, this is the hugest cod I've ever seen. I mean, it was like massively round, and it was red from sneaking through the tunnel. And I go, what the heck is this thing eating? So I grab a knife. I don't even think we had Victorinox back then. We just had the white-handled knives for halibut, maybe. So I slice that cod's belly open. Inside that freaking codfish, is a Budweiser beer can, silver, white, and red etching on it. So it's about 4 o'clock in the morning, about 20-foot seas rolling in, about a 300-foot ceiling. The crab lights are shining underneath. We're just rocking up and down. The block is going really slow going up, really fast going down, really slow going up. I crack that beer. Glug, 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 glug. I drink half. I give the other half to Jonathan. He drinks half, and we look over at George and go, "Sorry, George." And I went, "Oh, that's why the old man said not to drink on the boat." So those guys were drinking on the boat, and they didn't have their act together. And so we don't drink on the boat when we're fishing. We'll have a drink when we're at home. But yeah, that was on the Caprice. That was a good season.
So an unopened beer can.
Yeah, an unopened beer can and a codfish belly. You could see the silver and you could see the white. And the red, and my brother Neil drinks Budweisers, and they're pretty good beers. Yeah, and then our next job was with Glenn again on the Sleeve for barradie fishing. Boy, we fished Shelikoff Straits, one of the deepest spots out there. It must have been 120 fathoms. And I remember wearing bunny boots. It was so dang cold. We were up at Hallow Bay one of the trips, and it was just blowing so hard you couldn't even anchor, icing down. But those were big barradie. That was the last of the barradie around Kodiak there then. And then after that, I fished on the Sleeve. I remember fishing on that. And the Toilet, no, that was on the Bessie M. Then Bob Prue, I remember fishing with Bob Prue on the Bessie M out of Cook Inlet for barradie. And the toilet didn't work. So we'd have to grab a 5-gallon bucket and go to the bathroom in a 5-gallon bucket. Well, I hit the hot water one day instead of the cold water. You're talking, it's pretty cold for barradie fishing. So I filled that 5-gallon bucket up with hot water, set that baby down, and set on that. That was the most relaxing thing I've ever done in my life.
A little butt sauna?
A little butt sauna, man. I'll remember that one forever. So then my friend Pete, so on the new boat we built with Dad, the toilet, we didn't have a check valve in the dang thing. So you'd go up and down the waves and the toilet would gurgle. So your old keister was set about 2 foot above that baby, make it happen, flush that toilet, slam the lid. And so it was years before I put a check valve, big 3-inch check valve in that baby. Otherwise it'd do the gurgling and stuff. So my friend Pete's in the Pribilof Islands when the Nome needed that fuel. Remember that big, huge Russian icebreaker that came in, delivered the fuel?
I don't.
Yeah, they did. And so Pete, my friend, he's in the Anchorage Daily News talking about the toilet gurgling and spackling his fanny. And I remember that. I laughed so hard. I call up Pete. I go, Pete!
You guys, a lot of guys out here in Bristol Bay go in a bucket.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
old school.
It saves the room when they're designing their boat. They don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that extra room's for fish.
Best fertilizer ever, right?
Yeah.
And,
so what? Obviously, you've been fishing your whole life, right? What has been your scariest experience at sea?
Oh, serious. So all 5 of us boys are on the boat, and my dad's home. He's letting us run it.
Which boat?
The Time Bandit.
Okay.
The last one built. The first one, Dad, we were on it with Dad all the time.
What boat was the first one?
The Time Bandit too.
Oh.
Yeah, he kept the same. You know how he came up with the name? You ever seen the movie?
Yeah.
Time Bandits?
Yeah.
Well, Time Bandits. So my wife, Nadine, she goes, hey, that old guy's your dad. No, you 5 guys are the little midgets on there. And she goes, we were laughing our heads off. But he goes, Dave, what do you think? We just watched the movie Time Bandits with my dad. And my dad goes, what do you think of the movie Time Bandits? Or the name Time Bandit? I go, Dad, that's perfect for a name for a boat. So the scariest time is we're going crab fishing. We can get up to the Pribilof Islands. We're pulling blanks. We're left the wife at home. Everything back then you had paid for. So we had fuel, the groceries, moose, fish, salmon, everything in the freezers and stuff, wood, chop, coal, and everything. And so we take off, and then you see that one movie, the Wide World of Sports had this clip, the agony of defeat, and that skier's going down the big, huge jump, and he wipes out. And so you go crab fishing, and you're like pulling blanks, and it's icing up. It was probably 93, 4. I think maybe on that, right about then. And the Opies were that good right then for some reason. We had a big spike and then it went down again. And so we ended up going to the Zemchug Canyon, loaded the whole boat up with crab pots, steamed north, and we set the gear down the bank, and then we start pulling pots. We're getting blank, 10, 100, 500, then we finally get like 3/4 pots full, and that's when we fished. We switched from 6.5 bys to 7 by 8s. Which really helped us good. And so from there, I'll tell you another story. They have a regulation now of a largest crab pot you can build. And it's a 10 by 10 by 4. Well, so before that, we're in the Pribilof Islands. We're going to go to St. Matthews and fish with 60 pots. But we could only fish with 40 pots in St. Paul. So we take the doors off the pots, tie the pots together, put one set of buoys in there, and we got 40 pots. So we made 20 down into 20, and then we had another 20 that were 6.5 by 13 pots. So they're huge pots. one of them came up. So we get the tank checked, and the fishing guy comes on and goes, "No, that ain't going to work. You got to weld them together." So we take it all off, get everything done in about 5 hours, just tack welded everything together. So off we go. Well, one pot at the two pots together. The door here, we take the back panel, the other door is going into the back panel, and so then we roll up the panel and we pull out the one side, and so we had a full 6.5 by 13 pot on the boat. One pot comes up so full the picking winch can't even pick it up, and so we had to get the boat crane on it, just full of small crab right up close to the Pribilofs. So, but we're up to 7 by 8s now on the big boat now, and so we load that dang boat up like in 2 picks through the gear, full, all 3 tanks full of crab. And remember, all 5 of us are on that freaking boat too, all 5 boys. So for some reason I'm the last on watch. So we start coming back. We're on hour watches. So there's like 6 of us on there, maybe 7. I think there's all 5 of us and maybe 1 or 2 more crew members. I can't remember. But we're coming back to the Pribilofs to unload. And so I'm like 6 hours into waking up on the watch. And I get up. I can't remember who woke me up. And I go, "Man, this boat doesn't feel right, Mark." So I take it out of gear and I put it downwind, because that's what Dad taught us to do, is go downwind and go, and go there. So I go, and when the boat comes out of gear, what do? You wake up. So Andy wakes up, Neil wakes up, and I'm like smoking rubber downstairs, get my boots and rain gear on, and I do like a fireman. So you just have your boots sitting there, your rain gear, you're on. I'm flying up the stairs. Neil's right behind me. Goes, "What's going on?" I go, "Well, we got to check the bow." And luckily, I dogged the dang door up in the bow before I left too, off the deck. Go up to the bow, by then Andy, for some reason, he turns the boat into the waves again, and so the water was almost coming over the top of the rail. Water was up almost over my extra tufts in the bow of that boat. The pots are so thick with ice, so I grabbed this fire axe that we have. For some reason, we had a fire axe, and forget the baseball bats, they just wring your hands when you do the ice knocking. And I took that fire axe and I was swinging, and I knew right where each pot tie was, because we always tie them in 3 different spots. And I just whacked that pot tie, and I told Neil just to firewall it over the boat. We had to get one clear, and he got up on top. I said, "Just push it off." They're so thick, they were just packs. We got rid of 10 of those pots on top. The next 10 pots we brought down, we had to cut the doors off. And then we stopped using the pot ties for your coil. We started using the main line for going through and doing a knot, because it's just less pot ties on the boat, less hassle, a lot faster. And but that was tough to do. We had to smash them with a sledgehammer to get them out, just to undo the knot, and then throw the pots over to come back and get them. But that was so scary, and so many boats like the Northern Mariner and the Big Valley, probably all sorts of boats have sunk because of ice.
Destination.
Yeah, and if that would have happened, my dad would have lost all 5 of his sons on that boat. It would have just killed him. That was the scariest time ever.
Builds up fast too.
Oh yeah, and you just don't realize it.
Okay, what about your best time?
Oh
Your
man,
favorite memory?
Oh man,
it sounds like you got a few of them, but
yeah.
Can you think of one that is just your absolute favorite memory?
I'm gonna have to think for a while on that one. Oh yes, it must have been when my wife was fishing in Cook Inlet with me, and it was good. The whole family fishing for salmon, drifted in Cook Inlet. So the first time I have Nadine out, right, it's got to be 35 knot winds, 14-foot seas. And she goes, "Are you sure we should be out here, honey?" I go, "Oh, we're fine, honey." And we're bucking along. She's out there running the reel, helping me pick fish, and we get our first load in. And it was really fun fishing with her all those years till she retired finally. And then the best thing that I remember that she would make is salmon patties, and she still makes them. But she uses a potato, and that potato with the salmon and the onions and the egg and salt and pepper is so good. I've tried to get you guys to make salmon patties with potatoes in them, but because your salmon patties are okay, but they're not as good as Nadine's. Yeah.
Well, now you're in Bristol Bay. You've got your daughter.
Yes.
On the boat.
And we had my boys out here the first couple of years. Katie hasn't fished. Last year she came out, and this year she's out. And the boys are out the first couple of years we came out here. This is our 5th year out here now fishing. We used to tender out here all the time. From 81 all the way to 2002 I tendered until Dad passed away. and things sort of changed with the family. So we started fishing Cook Inlet, started working up north, and
We got that time bandit right around here now.
yes, Neil, I need to find my brother here and get some smoked salmon from him here real soon. Maybe we should go to Ugashik like you told me to, Mark.
He'd be down there.
He'd be down there. I get my smoked fish. Oh,
he'll be up here every other day probably.
Yeah.
So
You get down there. Yeah. So then, then I remember where Dad being with us the first year with the boat. Of course, he fell in the fish hole, and we almost wanted to tell him he owed us a case of beer, but we didn't dare tell him that because why did you guys cover up that damn hole, that walkway? But then I remember fishing on the Big Valley out of Cook Inlet too for barradine. Jamie Wilson, he still fishes with his boy Weston on deck. And so we're fishing barradine over there on the Big Valley, which the Big Valley sank to, and that boat in the bow would wobble in the bow. And the sides back then were only maybe 18 inches tall.
It feels like it's been like 18 or something years since
it went,
hasn't it?
And I was on that boat probably it was in the 79 maybe or so. It was for just one season. We shrimped out of Cook Inlet, then crab fished out of. That might have been about 83 when Dad sold the first boat and bought the next one. Can't remember about when I was with Ralph, but we're over there barradine fishing, and frickin' this wave hits us. Jamie's measuring crab, and he's getting washed around. I hit so hard, I'm doing this baseball slide for the opposite side of the boat, and I just try to aim myself to get the rail, and luckily I got the rail, and the wave just compressed me in there like that. I jump back up like this, and I'm looking for the next one coming at us, and Jamie is floating around still, and he just drops down into the fish hole up to his armpits. And I go, yo, it's a case of beer. He's good people.
You see yourself continuing to fish till when?
Till I can't get on the boat anymore. But it'd be nice to spend a couple summers at home with a sweetheart.
Yeah.
We did that a couple years doing charters out of home, or stay home from tendered the boat, and then the brothers would run it for crabbing, then I do the tendering. So then it'd be nice eventually staying with the kids. And Katie, the boys are too busy with kids and family, so they'll probably be a while before they start, but Katie wants to do it.
She's mechanical.
Yeah, she changed 2 injectors in Williamsport right before she crossed over on the state highway to get to Lake Iliamna. So then my brothers in Lake Iliamna got a hold of this one orange fish. They hooked into it and spooled them there. They set a big hook there too, and they had this fish straighten out the dang hook on it. And then so we're going across. COVID happened in 2020. So me and the son and Sam and Stan, friends of ours, were going over to come to fish in Bristol Bay. Raven Air just went bankrupt, so we lost our tickets. So we didn't know if we wanted to travel by air. Everyone was afraid to do anything. So we're coming over in our riverboat. We're going moose hunting, and we're coming over, and we're coming across Lake Iliamna, and we're looking at this rock awash in the water. We're going, what in the world? Yeah, I guess there could be, and it's flat calm. There's no tide movement, no swell like Hawaii or something like that. And we get about 500 yards up to this rock getting awash, and all of a sudden it disappears. Okay, so we didn't get too close. We went away, and all of a sudden it comes back again. So we turned back around. We got about 250 yards from it, and I swear there's like 3 or 4 big fish were just rolling their backs out of the water, just like that, just swirling next to each other. And we look at each other. We're looking at me. And I go, "Did you guys get that?" And they go, "No, we're just sitting there, just in shock. What in the world was that?" Well, then my friend Brady, his first year out here on his Marco, when he was a kid, he fished with his dad and he got his own boat, came across the Lake Iliamna, seen a bunch of blackfish too, and was so scared that he said he beached his boat on the beach before he went down the Queechak River.
Why?
He was afraid those fish were going to swamp his boat. They're so big.
Really?
Yeah.
What are they?
I don't know. We're going to find out. My brother couldn't catch one. My brothers couldn't catch one. The guy from River Monsters couldn't catch one. But I'm retired. That's what I want to do on my hit list. So my friends in Minnesota have been teaching me all their tricks for sturgeon fishing. Mm-hmm. So I think I got it between my brothers do with the hook straightened out, with the buoy, and what my friends told me, and from a few other things, I think I can catch one. And they did. Well, back in Alaska Daily News back in the 70s had a $10,000 reward or something like that for who can catch one.
We don't know what it is.
We don't know what it is. They're there. Something's there. And then
I've never even heard this.
really,
Yeah.
dude. And then they did a long line.
How are you going to make me go to Lake Iliamna?
Oh, it's got me going. So I want to catch one of them fish. Who knows what it is? And it will. Normal sturgeon will spawn up the rivers and stuff, right? You'll see them in Minnesota in pictures and stuff. But this we don't know.
Yeah.
And then we had the strike in 1980. We put 24 million fish up that river, and the Kweejack hasn't come back yet. It used to be a third of all of Bristol Bay. If we get the Kweejack back, the Nushagak, and the Ugashik starting to produce now, this could be 100 million fish run out here one day. It could be.
Last year it was incredible.
And can you imagine the Kweejack kick too, Mark?
Yeah.
Would it be like?
Yeah. Well, I've realized that just from a couple openings.
So we would come to Bristol Bay tendering every year. One of my favorite things was coming up here to Bristol Bay. So we'd get subsistence crab, and we'd come up to Bristol Bay. We'd park at Peterson Point, and all the old Italian guys would bring the calamari up, fresh calamari. And then the guys from Oregon would bring the smoked canned sturgeon. And then the guys from, this one guy from Florida would bring the Cuban cigars up. I'll tell you about Cuban cigars in a bit here. But man, we'd sit there and eat fresh calamari, fresh king crab, fresh smoked canned sturgeon. And then this Finnish guy helped me make the best pickled fish in the world. Between him and my dad, we got the best pickled fish recipe in the whole world to eat. I'll have to bring you pickled fish, Mark, one year.
You can't go lead me on like this,
dude. Because we just had pickles,
we did,
and popcorn and jalapenos.
What a great
and so I'm up here because we don't know what the heck we're doing. I'm transferring back and forth like a yo-yo, and then we don't have a group to fish. But then I was just telling Mark, I did better 1 year fishing by myself. My worst day in Igigik was better than my best day in Naknek with a group of fishermen. So I guess we need to give ourselves more credit than we think, but sometimes we don't.
The gut knows.
You gut knows.
So anything else you'd like to say?
Oh,
anything
man.
You'd like to?
Yes, the one thing I'll remember what Nadine has always said, the sea has been good to us. It's been really good. And I'll remember, I love that. And this one old timer off the provider has a beautiful t-shirt. It's been good. And then on our dad at the Fisherman's Memorial, we have a plaque, and we put there Johnny Hillstrand, a father who knew the good life of having his boys to sea, and he had all of us with him fishing.
Yeah.
Only been fired 3 times from Dad. Over all those years, it's only 3 times.
Well, what's great is you came up with your dad, and your kids come up with you. I'm sure that they've got some of those memories of being little and on Dad's boat.
Now I'm starting to write a book too about all this too, and I'm sort of doing it fictional because I tell the kids, well, we're not just going crab fishing; we're going on secret missions to Russia to get them to get their act together to open up their country for more love and peace and kindness. And so we finally, so one of the stories is about Chuck too. And my dad and Chuck play a cribbage game for us using Chuck's boat to get on a nuclear submarine to get dispatched into Russia. And it's over a game, and Chuck wanted this collection of Louis L'Amour books that my dad had. Full collection. Well, after the cribbage game, my dad gave that book collection to my son Aaron about 20 years later, so Dad won. So Chuck lays down Dad lays down a 6. Chuck lays down a 6, and Dad puts down another 6 for 6 and wins the game. And I remember that. Cribbage was a big time game they play on the boats.
They still do it.
Yeah.
Northern Patriot. I mean, they go through decks and decks and decks.
Do you remember the deck of cards that came out with the boats on them?
Yeah.
I got one left.
A clean deck?
A clean deck. One left. I gave them all away.
So you used to have one?
I used to have. I had 20 of them.
Because I'm going to get that deck from you somehow.
No, dude, serious. Because we were in Dutch Harbor, and some guy finds them, and I don't know why. I bought 2 packs. I should have bought every pack they had.
Yeah.
And
I've only seen pictures of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
My last one I gave to my friend John Bogey and then Tim Carr. My last 2 friends I gave them to. I got one. I'm going to look for another pack at home for you because it has all the old school boats on it.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. All right, David. I'm going to give you the last word. Anything you'd like to say to these guys?
if you go fishing, if you're in college, in high school, get a job, go fishing. You'll love it. The people you'll meet, the places you'll go. It's good to have fresh fish and a good clean seas. So everyone should be going fishing.
Well, speaking of that, just one quick one. How do they get jobs nowadays? Because you can't really walk the docks like you used to.
That's true.
Like you could right now.
Yeah, some people come out here to Bristol Bay, and it's pretty tough. They're living in connexes and stuff. So you have to have friends. I don't know how in the world we would get people to know where and who to call.
Right.
Because there's only so many boats fishing. You got to sort of trust you. You got to have your act together. You got to work hard. And we search for kids that do good in school, in high school, that during sports or athletic. So yeah, Mike and Ace fishes for us, and Mike fishes for us too here with the company. And they were two young boys that started out. I told my brother Andy, hey, give these guys a shot. So the first crab fisheries they got a shot at was hair crab fishing in the Pribilof Islands. And so that's a tough fisheries. You're pulling a 100-pot string and it's laying her right back out, and you're picking them as fast as you can pick them, and then go unload. But they got their start, and they're some of the best around now. So you just have friends. Boy, now with Facebook and everything else and Google, and you bet you can. But yeah, salmon is a good one, but the crab is going down.
Most guys that salmon have some connection to other species.
Yeah.
Whether it be cod fishing, halibut fishing, crab fishing. Okay. Anything you want to say to your family?
Sure do love you. I miss you, honey. Dang, I miss you. You're the best woman ever.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.
Oh, the stories you could tell, huh?
Oh, boy.
Thanks for listening to Galley Stories. We hope you like what the net brought in. Please leave us a review on iTunes. Whether you like it or not, we're not fishing for compliments. Look us up on Facebook and Twitter too, and reach out to us at galleystories@gmail.com.